we say easily, we love these sound bites. I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. Okay, I get it. Have you done the work so that epigenetically your DNA doesn't reject moving to a new economic class?
In a world where the recruitment of Black educators dominates headlines, one question remains: where are the conversations with folks who are leaving education? Introducing The Exit Interview, a podcast dedicated to archiving the untold stories of Black folks who have departed from traditional education spaces. I'm Dr. Lyons, and I'm embarking on a mission alongside my esteemed guests. Together, we shed light on the challenges, triumphs, and experiences of Black educators, aiming to inform and empower communities invested in understanding the crucial issue of retention in education. Welcome to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. All right, folks, welcome back to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators with me, your host, Dr. Asia. It's good to be back in the recording seat. And I have someone special with me today, Dr. Mary Hemphill. We met at FETC this January. Shout out to the folks at FETC, to Jennifer Womble, who was the one who got me to the conference. And so she is here today to share her story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. When I say honored, I cannot wait to dive into this conversation.
Yeah, we kind of started talking at the conference, sharing a little bit of your story. I put some of your clip on our social media. Folks went wild. They love you out there. And so I was so excited to get this podcast episode recorded. So let's just dive right in. And folks, before I even start, you got to follow her on LinkedIn. You got to get on her Instagram. She's out here everywhere. But let's start off with the very beginning. What was the decision that helped you decide, or the situation that you wanted to go into education? And what was that journey like for you?
Oh, so when I say being in education was an honor in and of itself, because Asia, we talk a lot about generational patterns or breaking generational curses. But what I don't think we talk enough about is what happens when education is in your bloodline and you have people setting the bar with each shift of the generation. So I come from a long line of educators in New York. And when I say public school 38 or public school 79, these are true community schools where I grew up hearing nothing other than you do the right thing for your students because you are going to church with these individuals and their parents.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You do the right thing for these individuals because your father, who may have passed on, did business with this other person's father and they made a call. What we forget is that there were already these intricate networks that had clout before we got here. And so I felt a calling to pick up the mantle and to continue in education, even though neither one of my biological parents were in education. My aunts, my grandmother was not an educator in the formal sense, but she was the educator of the community. She was the Sunday school superintendent. So when I have at age 3, 4, and 5, when I set up my dolls, my Care Bears in little seats, and I start giving them spelling tests, when I say it was so epigenetic to me to be like, okay, no, Care Bear, you are not spelling that word right. Like I heard the language of education.
Yeah.
So it was an honor for me to go into this work. And when I had the opportunity to be a 3rd grade and 4th grade teacher in the same classroom I had been a student in, I didn't take that lightly.
Yeah.
They asked me, they said, what school do you want to go to when I started applying? And of course, I applied in my hometown, not knowing if I was going back, not knowing any of those things. And there was a list. The superintendent at the time had a list of vacancies, and this was spring break. So these were all the people who were either going to resign, retire, move on, whatnot. And I see Southwest Elementary School, and I see the name of my 3rd grade teacher in the middle of the list. And Asia, when people say, if it's your calling, it'll keep calling till you pick up the phone.
That's right.
It was almost like I couldn't not pick up the phone. I couldn't not answer this call. I couldn't say, oh no, I'm going to go to another school. I stepped back into the same classroom that my third grade teacher had met me in. After 38 years, she pulled me aside that summer because I was coming in, she was packing up, and she said, my husband told me that these 38 years of materials and resources and workbooks don't have a home in our garage because that's his man cave.
Uh-huh.
She said, and I told him that is perfectly okay because I am seeding that into you and I am leaving everything for you to be able to do this work. So
yes, yeah.
To have students sitting in a classroom, and now I'm not in the desk, I'm at the front of the room, but on the binders and on sticky tape and on Post-it notes within all these materials that I'm using to create learning environments and engagement, almost 15, 16 years later, felt ephemeral. It felt full circle.
Yeah.
But what I also got to do in those third and fourth grade classrooms was to tell my students, I played in the same parks you played in, sat in the same seats you've been in. And by this time, Asia, I was graduated from college. I had studied abroad in Puerto Rico for a year, the Universidad de Sagrado Corazon, as an exchange student.
Okay, so she just showing out right quick for us, folks. She ain't had to do that, right? Just go ahead. Just go ahead. Leave us. Just
So
go.
let me tell you why that's so important. Asia, being a double major in education and Spanish wasn't on my vision board, but I knew that my community looked different than it did when I was there. As a woman of color, I was always aware of what it looked like, felt like, and sounded like to be othered. So going and majoring in Spanish, yes, I had taken it in high school, but language was always required. That's
just what it is.
That's just what we do. But I knew that if I acquired the Spanish language, like immerse myself in the culture, as an AIG student who had been labeled academically, intellectually gifted, going to Puerto Rico and enrolling in classes to where I had to pass to graduate, I had to find a tutor. Man, I had to learn how to ask for help. Meant I had to draft my concepts and my talks and all the different classes and things beforehand. And I had never been in a position to have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But what it elevated for me when I got back and graduated and walked into that school was asking my principal, give me every Spanish speaking student and family in the third grade. Because I wanted to show them that their language was not a barrier, it was an asset, and that families who are raising students from backgrounds of indigenous backgrounds, Hispanic backgrounds, the diaspora of what we think about when we look at the 23 levels of unconscious bias, seniority, marital status, all of that, even in the Spanish culture, me understanding machismo, meaning I didn't have educational conversations with a mother and father unless I bent my body language and directed it at the father so that he understood that there was still that level of respect. And culturally, that wasn't happening in our school because family and education is deeply rooted in communities where you're raising students of color. Asia, every single one of my babies for 3 years, and I looped them the last year, meaning I took them from third to fourth grade, passed, despite the fact that some of them literally came to the country weeks before they enrolled in my classroom.
Hold that thought.
Yes.
There's so many tidbits. I have a few things. The first thing is kind of going back to this being in the same classroom as your third grade teacher. Dr. Adrienne Davenport was on a few episodes back, and she talked about that her teacher, when she was in fourth grade, became her mentor teacher when she went back to the same school. And so there is this way that people find their themselves back in the communities that they were raised in.
Yes.
Right? And find that of value to be in the schools or be as close as they can be to that community so they can continue to serve and support the community that helped to raise them. And so I love hearing that story. And I'm so glad that there are so many of us out there who continue to go back to those districts and the schools that had supported them along the way.
Yes. Yes. And Asia, it's part of our history, but it's part of our responsibility
Yeah.
because income wise, there were other options. There's lots of options for those other individuals as well. Impact wise, there's other options. But I feel like it's those educators who went back that now are reaping the benefits of the commitment
Yeah.
and the responsibility to go back and say, I came from where you came from. There's more out there than they're showing you, than they're exposing you to, than they're offering you. So give them the language to advocate for themselves and give the people connected to them language to advocate for the babies that they love.
Yeah. Then this helps me think about this brings me to the second point I wanted to make is,
Yeah.
as you're talking, I'm thinking about all of the work and all the intention that you put into your classroom before you even got into your own classroom, right? That you're thinking about your future students and their families and their communities. And obviously you didn't know exactly where you're going to be, but you knew that you wanted to be as supportive as possible to as many communities as possible, knowing that your city, your area, your town that you kind of wanted to be in was changing and that you weren't afraid of that, right? And that's so important. And so when we talk about on this show, folks transitioning to different positions or leaving education altogether, this is the kind of folks that we're losing, right? Is that folks who are thinking about our children long before they see our children. And it is not that they just happen to have this position. This is where they ended up, but there was intentionality from the very beginning as to how they wanted to show up in a space to bring value to a community. And so I just wanted to point those two things out.
I love how you position that. Those are the people we're losing.
Yeah.
And it's sad because every single person I feel like who has left or who I've had the honor to share space with has said they have to sit down and weigh the pros and cons of staying in your home to prophesy a future that's possible or to go into a world where there's strangers to talk about why that prophecy matters. It's like, what do you choose?
Well, even
So
Jesus said you can't do miracles in your own land.
say it.
And so for some of us, it is to transition to something else that goes somewhere else. And we're not done talking about your story, but I just did want to pause on those 2 points of all of the work it took, right? To putting yourself in, like you said, I'm gifted. Things come to me easy. Never had to strain. And I'm putting myself in a position to struggle. But understanding the end goal is going to be so much more valuable, right? Than this like temporary challenge. So you taught third grade. Tell us more about that journey.
Yeah. So I taught third grade, looped my babies up to fourth. And I did that for 5 years before I realized there was such a mentorship gap in what I wanted to do in terms of the impact. What I meant was I wanted to do more outside my classroom. I wanted to be able to help BTs. I wanted to be able to help veteran teachers think differently about what's possible. And as a classroom teacher, your locus of control is small when it comes to what you can impact. Yes, you're impacting students and their families and communities, but school-wide, district-wide, unless you are just the type of educator who can navigate that balance. But Asia, that takes years.
Yeah, it does.
That takes years. And so I immediately decided that I wanted to go into administration. And I apply for an administration role and I get placed in a high school.
And you had been elementary all these years.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out because when I say
We all have our favorites and high school is not mine. So I want to hear how this worked out. I want to hear this transition. Yeah.
I would have no qualms in saying I literally was hiding in my office for about a week because these big children, they have a vocabulary I'm not used to. They have a way of subtly just dismantling a little bit. Like when I say in an elementary school, when you walk into the cafeteria and you're that teacher, You're going to feel the love. You're going to feel the feels. You're going to be like, woo. Okay.
Hold on. Come on, that teacher. Come on, that teacher. Because we were popular.
Okay. Like, right. Like, we're here. I don't want people to think popular in terms of like something unfactual or something that's unfounded. I'm talking about the clout to stop a student in their track with a look.
Yeah, that part. The warm demander,
the cultural value to say, now that you've taught years of students, that the big brother's like, don't play in Miss Hemphill's class. Like, that's what I'm talking about when I say
Mary,
that.
Dr. Mary, I wish we would have been teaching together. We would have been shutting it down.
Shut it down. It would have been so much fun.
Hold on. So, yeah, let me ask you this question before you continue. Just backing up a little bit. They call you, they say high school. You said yes.
I said yes.
So tell me, before you finish the story about this part, why did you say yes?
Let me tell you, and I love this question. In all things, this is what I will say that my parents did for me was they gave me the power of two things. They gave me the power of words and language based in death and life are in the power of the tongue. From the moment my mom found out she was pregnant, they spoke life into me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the second thing, and this came from my dad, he always would say, when you ask better questions, you get better answers. So instead of me growing up in a way of thinking, what's going to happen in third grade when I'm in second grade? Or what's going to happen in high school when I'm in middle school? I always thought long term. What if I position myself now for my 5-year from now self? I always knew I wanted to be in education. And so when I got to teacher, I was like, okay, let me look at the climate. Let me look at the landscape. And what I know, I will not always be teaching teachers, meaning every student who comes in my classroom is not going to want to be an educator, which is why I went to Meredith, which was a private institution, Western, which was a public institution, and A&T, which was a HBCU, because my end game was to be a superintendent. And I needed to understand the landscape of public, private, and a HBC so that I understood the realities of the teachers coming to me, the communities coming to me, and be able to speak to students' futures. So I said yes to high school because I had done elementary. And as a superintendent, what have I heard my whole career? Oh, yeah, they're a superintendent, but never been in the classroom. Oh, yeah, they're the director of elementary school, but they came from middle. People love gaps. So I decided early in my career to have fewer gaps, which gave people less excuses to try to dismantle me professionally. So I wanted elementary, I wanted middle, and I wanted high. And I think that thinking, Asia, comes from not only being raised as a woman of color, but being raised by two parents who grew up during segregation. My dad was born in 1936. My mom was born in the 50s. So when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to autonomy, when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to all of these structures, how they trained my sister and I, how they taught my sister and I, always was not what's the next step. What are the 5 steps ahead of this that position you to be in this space? So I wanted to do the whole K-12 continuum so that when I got wherever I was going, I could speak to the realities of every level.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that makes so much sense. And again, that speaks to the Spanish, that speaks to lots of things, and it speaks to your work right now. But continue. You were in high school. You were hiding in the office.
So I'm in the office.
You said yes, and now you're in the office hiding.
I said yes, and now I'm cowering down. I'm just like, oh my goodness. What I will say is that high school gave me the end of the story that I had no clue existed. I had 3rd and 4th graders who were graduating and moving on, and I know that I did my best. Are there things I would go back now and be like, I cannot believe I had a word wall? Like, there's just things that happen, right?
Or timed multiplication tests.
Oh, heavens. Or rote memorization.
Oh, spelling test, no.
Ooh.
I forgive you if you forgive me.
Thank you for the grace. Thank you for the grace.
Yes.
But what I had not banked on was I was the disciplinarian, or I was the administrator over the sophomores.
Uh-huh.
At the time, I had a sophomore student who had walked onto the football team from 8th grade. So when I say walked on, like, you don't even have to try out. You are it. Your career is set for you in the NFL. But he gets a write-up and he comes to my office. And this is my first disciplinary act, right? So I'm got the student handbook and I'm like, okay, this is what you've done, blah, 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 blah. Young man of color. And he says to me, but Miss Hemphill, I don't understand. I thought that I was doing the right thing because all my coach said was that I just needed to show up. Me not being able to read my textbook has never been an issue. I'm sorry, what? This young man, sophomore in high school, was not able to comprehend the textbook, was not able to understand the vocabulary, was not able to break down word problems, was not able to do it. But he had been given a pass because he was a star football player. What I saw was who did not do what they were supposed to do in elementary school, and how has he made it this far with not having the understanding of, if we're telling you you're going to the NFL and you're not able to read the contract, that is a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so while I was the administrator over student services for 1 year, I made sure that I let it be known that I wanted to be the administrator over curriculum and instruction. Because oftentimes in high school, there's this notion, I'm not a reading teacher. I'm an AP biology teacher. I'm a math teacher. I'm a social studies or history teacher. I don't teach reading. We worked for 2 years to find ways to ensure that not just athletes, but students across the diaspora of extracurricular, arts, STEM, dance, whatever, had the opportunity for literal reading tutoring. And I don't mean reading, yes, in the context, but I mean breaking it down. What are the phonemes? What is the shared reading? I want you to do all these things, because what we had to figure out was how to do this and keep their dignity intact.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say that had to have been so difficult, because one of the challenges, and Joy Osborne, Deliso Osborne, she was also on the podcast, and her work now is helping students become engaged in reading when they're past 3rd, 4th grade, right? And like, that is very difficult to keep their dignity intact.
Yes.
And we're starting from scratch at a lot of things. And that balance, right? That balance so that they are successful is so, so challenging.
Yeah. It's not that we had to do so much to prepare ourselves for the students. We had to prepare ourselves for the teachers, because one thing, all a teacher would have to say is one thing, and you would see that child's dignity. You would see that child's hope just disintegrating. You're a senior and you can't, absolutely not on my watch. And so that took time, because that was a community mindset that had to shift. And I kept saying, why are you reporting scores based on students who don't have the base level understanding to not only decode this high level, highly contextual vocabulary and understanding, especially in biology and some of these tougher science and math courses. And the gap was that we had students who had STEM proclivity, but because they had been oversaturated and overrepresented with special education labels, they never got access to the AP. They never got access to the honors classes.
Yeah.
So you can imagine that's a heavy lift for me, because what I'm coming from is a self-contained classroom where everybody has access to me. I have some locus of control over their learning, to a system that not only wasn't ready for that conversation, but oftentimes did not intend on changing the system so that students would get the help.
My question, I'm thinking about these conversations that you're having. I cannot imagine the tension.
Trust me. The tension. And here's the piece that we don't talk about enough, is that the tension on your supervisory executive leader level, meaning your other APs and your principals, is very different than the tension between you and the superintendent, which is different than the tension that's created between the superintendent and the board. And then the tension that's created between you and the community when you're trying to tell somebody's star football baby that he can't read and that you will be setting him up to fail if you don't get on board with us getting him help.
And what state is this? Tell us the city, state. Where are you in this context?
So this is in North Carolina. Yeah, this is in North Carolina. And this was a community, Asia, that was low socioeconomic. At the time, I believe we were 80 to 85% free and reduced lunch. And when I say that, I'm talking about from the feeder pattern of the elementary, middle, high. And it was a football town.
So this is people's way out. This is families' way, meal ticket. It's their way to get to be someone in the future and in the current. My child's a start. They're getting stopped at the store. They're getting handshakes. They're getting free stuff. They're getting the recognition at
And by proximity, you're also a local store.
Exactly. You're the mom of. Everybody has matching hoodies and the theme that.
And even when that child goes off to college, you still, to the point, Asia, there was a section in the stadium where the moms and the dads of the athletes would sit, even if your baby had graduated 10 years ago.
Wow. So you just coming in here flipping tables over.
And I'm like, boop, absolutely.
Yeah.
But coming from a place of, again, going back to my thinking, I'm thinking about that child 5 years from now.
Of course, yeah.
When the contract is run off, or heaven forbid, injury. Heaven forbid, I don't know, change of season. He wakes up, he doesn't want to play football anymore. He doesn't want to do basketball. They don't want to play lacrosse, soccer, right? It's across the whole continuum of sports. And if they don't want to dance anymore, they don't want to do United Nations or debate team anymore. We're talking about sports, but it applies to everything.
Sure.
When you challenge what the parent has aspired in their head and said, this is something that's not about what I feel. This is something about what I know. And without this knowledge, without this skill, without this information, the level and ceiling that you've created, they will only get here because the gap is in you doing the hard thing now. And that's hard for parents. That's hard for community members. That's hard for school leaders who have this professional persona. And when you challenge that, that comes with tension. That comes with labels. And it's hard to navigate that.
Yeah. And how long did you do that particular work? How long did you, fight the good fight of faith, I guess I would call it.
Fight the good fight. I fought the good fight as an AP and as a principal, because after that, I became a principal of turnaround school, always turnaround schools, for 8 years.
Wow.
3 years at that high school and 5 years as a principal doing turnaround work in low socioeconomic populations and communities, schools that always look like the school I came from.
Sure.
In communities that desperately needed change. So when I would get a call or was recruited, it was always this school's in crisis.
Go. Hey folks, it's me, Dr. Asia. If you've been nodding along with this episode, I want to personally invite you to Podcast and Pause, an book club for Black educators. This isn't your typical book club. My good friend Stacey Taylor Brandon and I are hosting a virtual space that joins the stories of Black educators from the podcast and our work supporting the wellness of Black folks. No reading required, just intentional listening, deep reflection, and community care centered around the episodes of the Exit Interview. Starting in August, we'll be gathering virtually every other week to exhale, process, and pour back into ourselves. It's a space created for us, by us, to restore what the work tries to take. This space is for current and previous Black educators, which means teachers, professors, peer professionals, social workers, admin, and so on. If you're craving connection, healing, in a space where your experiences are honored and held, join us. Tap the link in the show notes or go to exitinterviewpodcast.com to learn more and get on the list. All right, back to the episode. So obviously the work that you did as an AP, someone's found value in that, saw the work that you were doing, saw the success you had and maybe some of the challenges that you had and said, we want you these other places.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, oh, turnaround schools, listen, tough. And for folks who are listening who don't know what a turnaround school is, can you define it for us or give an example?
So a school in turnaround is what I typically call school in crisis. And so they could be in crisis academically, meaning students are not hitting achievement levels at a dismal rate. The bulk of students are not on grade level. You can have a school that's in crisis culturally, meaning you may have great teachers, you may have awesome curriculum, but the culture is so stagnant or the culture is so toxic that nothing can grow. Students can't grow, teachers can't grow. It's really hard to have an environment. And then you can have a school that's in crisis when it comes to just engagement and efficacy, meaning they've tried a lot of things. Maybe they've had a long stream of school leaders. And with that comes just changing expectations and whatnot. And so sometimes that school that is in crisis from the latter, they are in need of stability. They are in need of clarity. And so regardless why the school is in turnaround, it is for you to fill the gap. It is for you to get things connected, get systems out sometimes and put new systems in so that things can get moving. So ultimately students can learn.
Thank you. Thank you. And so after your time as an AP and a principal, what was the next step for you? Where did you go after that?
The State Department. And Asia, I tell this story all the time that this journey after the principalship was not on my vision board, but it was the vision that God had for me. I'm on vacation. I'm in Cancun for Christmas. It's a few days before Christmas. I literally want to say it was probably a day or two before Christmas Eve. And I'm trying to get a signal out just to let my family know I've landed. I'm good. Can't get a signal. I look down. It's a 919 number, Raleigh. It's the lieutenant governor at the time with his educational leader, director, and their committee. He says, "This Dr. Mary Hemphill," because I had graduated my PhD by that time. I said, "Yes, this is she." He says, "Hey, this is the lieutenant governor and one of the directors from Educational Oversight Committee. We are about to put computer science into all schools across the state that will impact 1.9 million children. And we want you to come to Raleigh and lead that work."
No application.
No application.
Folks, listen.
No application.
Just phone calls. Boop. Listen, I'm in Cancun, toes out, nails done, toes done. Large sun hats.
Okay.
Landed. And now we talking.
Mimosa in hand. I was ready to vacation. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, do you know what I did? Do you know what I said to this man?
Let me think about it, or no thank you?
I said, "I think you have the wrong number. I am not."
The man said your whole name.
Said my whole name. He might as well have called my social, security number. I said, "Thank you. I am not a computer scientist." Because all I'm hearing is computer science.
Yes.
Asia, that is nowhere in my repertoire. That's nowhere in my experience bank. And he said, "I'm going to stop you right there." He said, "I do not want you because you're a computer scientist. I want you because you are a problem solver. I want you because you transform spaces. And I want you because you're not afraid of the hard work." And he said something to me that I knew in theory, had never experienced in reality. He said, "We've been following your career." And he said, "You never run away from the hard environments. You don't run away when you're met with a school that is in crisis or needs transformation. He says, and everywhere you've gone, you've impacted change. And that's what we need in Raleigh. And I said, okay, let me think about it. He said, I'll be in touch. January 2nd, I get back to the States. January 2nd, I sit down at my desk. I was a middle school principal at the time. We had just started a continuation of the first STEM magnet programs, which brought an affluent community together with a community of poverty, blended them together to increase access. Sitting at my desk, I get a call January 2nd. He said, what time can you come for an interview?
Wait, that's not, he didn't waste no time. He said, Happy New Year, ring, ring.
Happy New Year. Put your resolutions to the side. Come interview. Asia, I think it was April. I had to make a decision because the work had to start in June because they were going to be bringing the Big 10 together. So IBM, SAS, Lenovo, Microsoft, they were doing all of these things to get ready for this pipeline and bringing computer science. There had not been new standards in the state in 20 years. And they wanted me to develop a set of statewide standards for not only computer science, but also artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, machine and virtual learning, all of which, by the way, were foreign concepts to me.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Leaving the school was hard.
Yeah, of course.
Leaving the community was hard because where I had looped my 3rd and 4th graders, I looped my 5th graders when my superintendent sent me to the middle school. So I brought my 5th graders, their families, and the community over to the middle school. And there was trust there.
Yeah, of course.
Moved to Raleigh. And in 2.5 years, we had the first set of statewide computer science standards and legislation and policy to back it up.
I guess he didn't have the wrong number.
He didn't.
He did not have the wrong number, folks.
And thank you for that. And let me tell you what that did for me that I didn't know I needed. One of the reasons I did not get an EDD was because I wanted to know the next thing about how people think about leadership, how people think about education. And I did not realize that I had become comfortable in doing school. Like when you're in school, your whole life, you grew up, you know how to do school. You know the systems. My mom was on the school board for 14 years. Like when I say we're in this thing.
Yeah.
We were in it. We were good. I needed a beginner's mindset for my sole purpose. Being the director of computer science for the state took me back to asking better questions, to positioning myself intentionally in the room so I could be quiet and learn. It gave me business acumen to watch these engineers and cybersecurity analysts and CEOs and how business deals are done. Like, that's not something you get as an educator. I learned the language of progression. I learned the language of the ask.
Yeah.
When you go to somebody and you have to ask this big business to support 10 internships for high school seniors. Like I didn't have the opportunity. I was a beginner in my industry again, in a very different place.
Yeah.
And it just sharpened me. It challenged me because what did I even know about building statewide curriculum? Like I had to learn and get up under people who knew way more than I did to make this happen. Best thing could have ever happened to me.
I'm so glad you're saying that because I often think about folks who 20 years in 3rd grade, 14 years in the same classroom, same school, and they have a fear of relearning, right? They don't know, how would I even start that? How would I know this thing? I don't know what to do. And you're saying, I just paid attention. I was silent. I took notes. I asked questions. And I'm so glad that you're saying that because I know that there are lots of folks who want to try something new, go to different places, and they just don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And so when they get there, what to do next. So I'm glad you're saying this.
And Asia, I think there was uncertainty. Yes, there were days where it's like, okay, this was a risk.
Yeah.
But isn't that there with anything?
Yeah.
What I did not want over the risk was the regret of being 85 and saying, why didn't I do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is when we think about education. I heard an amazing superintendent. I had the opportunity to go to the Off School Grounds Coalition 2 years ago, and I heard a phenomenal superintendent who said, you can be in education a long time and be ineffectual and not move from your position.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to become that.
Yeah.
30 years, and I should have left 10 years ago, but I'm in it, just coasting. Who wants a life of coasting?
Yeah.
Like I'm not impacting anything, nor am I reaching my potential. Denzel Washington said, when you see a hearse, if you have not lived out your full life, then there's a U-Haul behind that hearse with all the ideas, all the things you didn't do, all of the lives and you did not impact because you decided to stay comfortable.
Yes, right.
I didn't want that. So being in this space, unknown, risky, it took courage. There were days where I was like, I'm going back to a school. Give me my classroom. Like, this is comfortable. The reward, you can't take those experiences from me. The things I learned there, and that's when I decided and realized I was becoming an edupreneur. All of the 20 years plus of education and this entrepreneurial mind that had been wanting to come out, but I didn't have any systems to where my entrepreneurial mind could show up and thrive. Let me take that back. Could show up and survive, because to say thrive means that the system was created with me in mind, and it never was.
On that note, you're not there anymore. And this is the Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators.
I'm not there.
You're not there. And so the next question is, what was the situation that helped you decide that it was time to do something different?
Absolutely. So given my background of being in transformational schools and always a school that required a crisis plan, I was not unaware of, and I was not inexperienced in being in situations where the stakes are against you or the information is scant, but you have to make a decision. So I immediately, once computer science got up and rolling, I was over a new academic area and I was named the director of academics, meaning I went from a one-person team to having 86 people under my umbrella across every content area.
Wow.
At the state level, which is always fun. Asia, the amount of challenges, the amount of issues, and I'm over everything from high school graduation to figuring out how we're going to do the training and orientation for LGBTQIA students.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these conversations are everything from legislation and policy to practice and implementation.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized about 6 weeks into it that I was asked to take over all the academic areas because I was vigilant. But I also was starting to be labeled as a vigilante because I kept bringing up what was happening. And there's only one letter difference between vigilant and vigilante. Because when you're vigilant, you're observing, you understand, you're raising the issues, you understand the system, you know how to navigate it, you understand bureaucracy, but you also know how to get urgent change and who to speak to. And it requires this dexterity. But once you start raising the bar or raising the flag or ringing the bell on too many things, the vigilant got you the job. Being vigilante gets you the label of being hard to work with, of being aggressive, when you are simply deeply passionate about a marginalized community or marginalized group of people who this policy is not good for them. And remember when I told you, if it's your calling or keep calling?
Mm-hmm.
I got asked to speak. It could be a back to school conference, or it could be a leadership summit. And people would say, can you come speak for I can't, because I'm in a role that is a state funded role.
Yeah.
And so that's where the limitless leader, which started out as the limitless ladies, came from. And I would work on my business in the evening, not knowing that I was planting seeds for my future. But when the no's to purpose started to outweigh the yeses to a system that wasn't designed for me in mind, I had so much energetic debt in me that the work wasn't enjoyable anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I had learned the system so well that I could go through. I was making change, I was making impact, but it wasn't necessarily hard, fulfilling, or as deeply impactful as I thought it would be. And in 2022, January, I had to make a decision. And I said to myself, what would happen if I make an exit strategy to leave this role and literally live off of what I could make in my company? Because when you have been 22 plus years and you know at the end of the month, you were going to get paid.
Every month, consistently.
Like clockwork,
Yeah.
holidays, when you know that your insurance covered, like boom, you're good. Like you have to plan for that. You have to do a mindset shift for that. And I was no longer in a space where me being vigilant was enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, at that time, I'm getting older, and I had become really comfortable with not being a vigilante the way they labeled me, but I was okay being a disruptor.
Yeah.
And I knew that the system is not designed for disruptors. So what I say to people now who are thinking about making a shift and make, especially women of color, I say a lot of times that the safest place for a woman of color to work is for herself.
Say it again. Nope. Say it again.
Place for a woman of color to work is for herself.
Yeah.
And coming away from those mental systems allowed Mary to show up, not necessarily Dr. Hemphill. Mary got to answer the questions, not Dr. H. Mary got to create what she would have wanted when she was in the seat of professional learning, not what the state wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And as I built, April 1 will be 6 years of the Limitless Leader, and going from solopreneur to now being an S Corp with 2.5 employees full-time and 1 part-time. It showed me that creativity is medicine. And the system I was in not only didn't allow me to be as creative as I needed to be, I wasn't as creative as I wanted to be in bringing people what I knew was going to be different. Not to say the best or perfect, but I knew it was going to be impactful so that students would win. And the closer I get, because every day I feel like I'm growing. Every day as a business person, I'm learning. Every day when I step on the stage or when I do a workshop, I'm honing my craft. Is literally creativity was the medicine I needed. And the system literally was trying to keep me from being my best creative self.
So I love that you're talking about this, and it makes sense for us to then, I guess, can you just keep sharing about what you're doing right now? I know I'm skipping around in my questions, but you're already there. So tell us about your work.
Yes. So what I love deeply about what I do is I have the opportunity to, and let me back up, in the systems I had learned, it looked a lot of times like asking for permission.
Sure.
Can I go to the doctor?
Sure.
You wait for somebody to give you permission.
Yeah.
May I please take a vacation with my family? And you wait for permission. And so my human doing was top notch. I'm good. We can do all the things there. I know how to show up. I know how to do those things. My human being was suffering. And I just told you, my parents are older. So I'm not only missing time with them. I mean, even health-wise, 90-hour weeks do not a creative leader make.
Yeah.
because 90-hour weeks means I'm always bargaining for rest. You gave me an incredible deck when we met, the rest deck.
Yeah.
Had you met me in the system, that rest deck might have been opened this fall. But because I'm in a space now where I'm autonomous in navigating the responsibility of my freedom, I have used that rest deck every single weekend and pulled out one thing on Sunday that I do to intentionally rest for myself.
Yeah. Shout out to Trisha Hearsey, by the way, for that rest deck and all her work at the NAP ministry. If you all don't know about her and her work, check her out. She's on Instagram. She's everywhere. The NAP ministry, NAP, NAP. Continue.
It is so good. It's chef's kiss.
Yeah, it is
Thank
good.
you so much for that. It was such a beautiful and thoughtful gift. And when I think about what I do now in terms of being a multi-level facilitator, so we do keynotes, workshops, coaching, and consulting and retreats for leaders within corporate, within education, as solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, to connect their human being with their human doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you connect those two things, you have limitless potential. And Asia, I had been so limited. People often ask me, where did the limitless leader come from? From a life of being limited. From a life of being limited. From having to ask permission. From figuring out a system that was designed for someone who did not look like me, someone who did not have my background. From watching the rich history that I came from lose the respect that we started off with when it came to, there was a time when the parents, guardians, and community, if the teacher said it, law. I was watching all of that walk out the door. So yes, once you've been limited for so long, you know exactly what that feels like. And so people say, what's your avatar? And immediately, have you been limited in your personal or professional career? Is your narrative been limited by what was said to you, by what was done to you, by the questions people didn't ask you, or the opportunities they didn't advocate for you for? If that's the case, you're my people.
Yeah. Thank you
Because
so much. Yeah. Continue. Go ahead.
no. Just because at this point, whether it's a keynote, whether it's a workshop, whatnot, or what have you, without the human being part of it, and I'm not talking about just emotional intelligence, we have overused and we have miscalculated what emotional intelligence really is and its power. About taking emotional intelligence and coupling it with the relational intelligence that starts with you. Meaning, the rest, let me use the rest deck. Had you not given me that, one, that was awareness enough for me to start to look for spaces and places in my life where I feel like, not that I'm burnt out, but that one more step, one more lack of boundary, one more meeting that could have been an email, that rest deck is going to be helpful. But guess what, Asia, the only reason I have the autonomy to say no, the only reason I have the autonomy on a Monday, if I want to, after this interview, if I want to shut it down for the day because this can't take it anymore, I can do that. Because people think that freedom is awesome and wonderful and it's amazing. Freedom is a responsibility. And we don't teach people how to be responsible with their freedom. So this work I do now is real. I'm able to share my story without thinking about a legislator who may be on a different political party than the governor who appointed me. I can speak, and I know it's not going to be at cross purposes with a state superintendent or another director who didn't have the same ideals as me. But I also have to be responsible to who I am, what I know, the brand I'm creating, and the impact that's connected to that brand. So when we say free, it's not a free for all. It's a free for me, but I get to design what that free looks like now. It is so awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. It's awesome. And Aisha, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know this was possible.
I describe it also as an entrepreneur. I love that term. I'm gonna borrow that because teachers don't steal, we borrow. Like you just said, whatever I imagine, whatever the ancestors drop into my spirit to do, I get to do.
Mm-hmm. Speak.
Yeah.
Speak.
Yeah.
And Asia, have you felt this? Because I have. It's like we say easily, we love these sound bites. I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. Okay, I get it. Have you done the work so that epigenetically your DNA doesn't reject moving to a new economic class?
We don't have time for you to start. You said I got until 6:50. Stop playing. You're not going to sit here and drop a gem and I'm looking at the clock and I got 12 minutes and I got 75 more questions.
But you understand what I'm saying, right? Like the epigenetic coding to say to your parents or your godparents or whoever raised you, there's not a brick and mortar I'm walking into, but I'm creating monetary gain and making impact in the world from the gift I was given and dealing with whatever the response is, good or bad. And I use the example, I come from middle class. We were not rich by any means, but we had everything we needed, right? Food, water, shelter, love, all of that. We had all the things, but we never had a garage. So like when we talk about privilege and we decide that there are certain instances, certain groups, certain classes that have this privilege, I often talk to people and I say, I grew up with a carport, meaning I watched my parents for almost 18 years set their alarm clocks based on the 30 to 40 minutes it would take in bad weather to ice off the car, to heat up the car, and then have the space to get to where they were going so that they still got there on time. I watched my dad salt and ice the driveway and shovel so that the car could get to where it was going. Like he would literally have a packet. That was time, that was energy, that was resources. To now, I live in a home with a 2-car garage. I've only known, yes, I have to be there at 8. I need to get up at 6:30 or 5:30 because there's this 30 minutes where I have to get ready to go into the environment with my vehicle. That has been eliminated. Epigenetically, my nervous system and my brain had to rewire itself for the language of efficiency, the language of a need that has been eliminated. So now, instead of me setting the alarm for 5:36, if I have to be there at 8, I can get up at 6:30. I can ease into my day because my car is safe in my garage. And at the touch of a button, I can warm it up without putting the key into an ignition. That's foreign to me. And it's no small thing because guess what? The reality that I'm creating right now is the new bottom for the next generation. When and if I have kids, my kids will never know growing up with a carport. So you talking about generational curses, and I'm talking about just the language of accessibility, the language of time freedom, the language of understanding that, yes, and we're not talking 100 years. This is in the very short 20 some years to now we've established a new bottom. And Asia, I'm not talking about empathy. I'm not talking about kindness. I'm talking about a garage.
Yes, I got you. I'm sitting here processing everything you're saying right now. This is fantastic. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So
yes, I do.
I just think that there's so much that this new life, this new access, this new way of being able to create impact and income with gifts we were given with our beautiful cultures, creeds, religions, sexual orientations, languages, with our trauma, because that's the other piece. The journey I've just told you about was not perfect, but it was real. And it doesn't make me any less deserving of any of it.
Yeah.
And so this ideal that you have to go lockstep, win, grow, lockstep, win, grow, replicate. That's not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is try, fail faster, get it, go back to the beginning. Try again, get a little bit further, do a new idea, you got new information, start again from the beginning. And our nervous system hasn't been calibrated for that.
Yeah.
And so it's deep work and it means the world because we're creating a new normal for who's going to come behind us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I think I'm going to, in my time I have left, I want to ask you a question I asked you before when we met, but I think that more folks should hear your answer. And that is, for you, what does it mean to be well?
Oh, I love this question. For me to be well means that I'm as close to, if not on top of, the reason that my soul was given purpose. To be well has nothing to
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
To me, being well, yes, I want to be healthy. Yes, I want to be in my mind. I want to be able to compartmentalize and grow and bring these things out and deal with my trauma, and I want to be healed. But if I am so far away from my soul's purpose that I'm literally creating energetic debt every single time I say no to the right why and say yes to the why that's right in front of me, I am doing myself a great disservice and I'm unwell in that. And I will say I have never, Asia, been this well. I have never been this close to my well-being. I have never even had language to tell you about what well-being looks like for me since I've been on this entrepreneurial journey. So exiting for me was the way I got well. And we must. That's why I love your work and I love what you're talking about in this podcast, because until we get real about creating systems, creating language, creating support, and creating accountability for educators of color that are not necessarily policy driven, but are rooted and grounded in the purpose of why nonprofits, why school districts, all this. Like, it's policy is a part of it, but who's creating the policy?
Yeah.
Because if we don't have the same definition of well, you're creating policy that supports the wellness of your people and your best interests and your epigenetic understanding of freedom and autonomy and responsibility, not mine. Because a lot of these wellness programs make us a little bit more unwell. I'm serious.
I know you're serious.
Because I've seen it.
Yeah. You say that so beautifully, that the ways that you can see it in the ways that school districts create affinity group spaces, how they run them, how they have wellness programs or do not have them, how they have exit interviews, how they do not, all with their lens in mind only. Their perspective in mind only, their people in mind only. And so we do have a lot of Black folks who are not well and are still in education, trying their best to show up for our children and for their colleagues, and are just not well. And the folks who leave and they go into nonprofit or go into being an entrepreneur or doing something else and are still not well.
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to have to leave it here, folks, because I'm about 3 minutes before she's going to have to just close the computer up on me. But this has been fantastic.
I'm honored.
Dr. Mary Hemphill, thank you so much for being on the podcast. If people need to find you, if they want to reach out and work with you, how can they find you?
Yes. Go to LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn.
Yes, she is, folks.
Instagram at The Limitless Lady. And our website is www.bealimitlessleader.com. You'll find services, products, ebooks, and there's a forum. Let's work together. Just click on that form and we could set up a virtual coffee chat and connect.
Awesome. All right, folks, this has been another fantastic episode of the Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you again. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to the Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. If today's conversation resonated with you, know that you're not alone. Through Lyons Educational Consulting, we work to support Black educators in navigating racial battle fatigue, reclaiming their wellness, and building community-centered solutions that sustain us in and beyond the classroom. If you're looking for workshops, wellness cohorts, or strategic support for retaining Black educators, let's connect. Visit lyonseducationalconsulting.com or follow me on LinkedIn, Dr. Asia Lyons, or Instagram, Hello Dr. Asia, to learn more. Until next time, take care and keep thriving.